Like any game setting with RPG elements, Legend of the Five Rings allows for a great degree of specialization. This specialization takes the form of the different schools, essentially places where your character can gain certain skills. And if you want to acquire skills that are super special, you can opt for more advanced training techniques known as paths. Of course, what skills you want to acquire kind of depends on your character class. Yet another example of the RPG elements of L5R. There are technically several different classes like monks or artisans, but as a general rule, it kind of all falls into three very broad categories. The Bushi, which is your obvious fighter class, the Shugenja, that are your magician class, and the Courtiers, which is basically your social class. Of course, each clan has its own schools, and each school has its own particular techniques that you can learn. This video will focus on the Courtiers of the Phoenix clan, which mostly means the Asako with a little support from the Shiba. The thing about the Phoenix clan is that, given that they are essentially the relative pacifists of the Empire, you'd think that they would invest quite a bit in diplomacy and thus in courtier schools and paths. But of course, that's overlooking the fact that the Phoenix are a magic-oriented clan first and foremost. And while they're not isolationist like the Dragon Clan, they still would rather spend their time studying rather than be disturbed by politics. Understanding magic and seeking enlightenment are the primary goals of the Phoenix clan. Diplomacy is a distant third. That kind of attitude is always going to be a hindrance to the Phoenix becoming a powerful diplomatic or political force like the Crane or Scorpion clans. This is best exemplified by the Asako family, who are technically the dedicated courtiers of the Phoenix, but are really more like Dragon Clan monks than courtiers, and indeed would rather spend their time dedicated to studying the path of man, the secret mission statement that the spirit of the Kami Shiba bestowed upon them after his death. But much like the dragon monks, the Henshin will have to wait for a video of their own. But that really is it. The general theme of the Phoenix Clan Courtier is the monk, which is kind of funny because again, monks are typically the Dragon Clan's theme, which is kind of funny given that their dedicated courtier family operate more like magistrates and detectives, but again, that too is a subject for a future video. At any rate, when it comes to family duties, the Asako can be simply divided into two broad factions, the isolationists and the inclusivists. The isolationists are pretty self-explanatory. They would rather dedicate themselves solely to the path of man and ignore the material world altogether. The inclusivists have a different viewpoint. While they agree the path of man must remain secret as per the final instructions of Shiba, they also believe in the duty of the Asako family to preserve knowledge, and not just preserve it, but to share it with the wider world. Admittedly, this attitude does often bleed over into a kind of self-righteous paternalism, where the Asako view the other clans as children to be guided to enlightenment. But as a general rule, the inclusivists tend to be more idealistic than the isolationists, and thus it is likely from them that the bulk of the Asako courtiers and diplomats come from. Which of course brings us to the only two schools, the Asako courtiers and the Asako lore masters. Essentially, these two schools are just two sides of the same coin. Not only do they employ the same facilities, they even share pretty much all the same techniques, like the Temple of the Soul, which can be employed to help the courtier or lore master achieve inner peace even in unfamiliar and unnerving surroundings. From the Ashes, which encourages the idea of learning from mistakes so that even in dishonor, wisdom can be gained. Wisdom of the Ages, which teaches how to perceive connections and parallels between past and present events that others might not see. And Invincible Mind, which instructed both courtiers and lore masters to study the Shugenja arts of others, and thus enabling them to erect better mental defenses against spells that might seek to influence their thoughts. Those who master Invincible Mind are indeed nigh impossible to magically influence, and are very good at seeing through deceptions both mystic and mundane. Thus, the only real difference between the courtiers and the lore masters is the use to which these techniques are put. The courtiers focus on diplomacy and politics, while the lore masters focus on scholarly pursuits. Of course, the lore masters are trained to use their knowledge in diplomacy when they have to. Extensive knowledge on certain subjects can be useful to a diplomat in understanding a particular social situation. From here we move on to the courtier paths, beginning with the Asako scholar, which is really just the Asako lore master, but more. The Asako Scholar Dojo is so small and exclusive that there are rarely more than a dozen students at a time. And this is because in order to become a scholar, you have to have a certain characteristic that the Asako call the mind of fire. To say that one possesses the mind of fire means that you have 1. An incredibly powerful memory, and 2. An incredibly strong sense of intuition. Those who possess the mind of fire are able to make connections between different subjects and fields of study that others simply could never see. To the Asako scholar, everything is connected. Knowledge is like a tapestry, and all subjects, from agriculture to studying tea leaves to the forging of swords and worship of the fortunes. These are all the threads that comprise the tapestry of knowledge, and they are all woven together and interconnected. The only known Asako scholar technique, the hidden patterns, teaches the prospective scholar how to study multiple topics and spot the patterns that connect them all together, even if they seem completely unrelated. Unsurprisingly, Asako scholars are found almost exclusively working in the Asako libraries. Based out of the largest shrine to Tenjin, the fortune of scribes and secrets, the Asako libraries rival that of the Ikoma family as one of the greatest repositories of knowledge in all the empire. Here, the scholars dedicate themselves to the study and maintenance of the various documents contained within, usually at the direction of the head researcher. The next path is that of the Asako philosopher, a path that has its origins in the 5th century in the city of Nikesake. Originally founded as a military encampment during a fight between the Phoenix and Lion clans, the city of treaties became a major diplomatic hub for the Phoenix, especially in their relations with the Crane clan. Its second governor, Asako Itsuo, had a great fascination with philosophy, and by the time of his death had amassed an immense private library, one that his descendants, beginning with his son, chose to keep adding to over the years. Around 487, it was decided that rather than let the texts continue to collect dust, they should be used to instruct. And so a school was opened in Nikesake. And because the sessions were always held in a room that had blue tiles in its interior design, the philosopher's school became known as the Blue Tiled Room. Of course, this philosopher's school is not simply philosophy for its own sake. Philosophers are trained to use their knowledge and reasoning abilities to try and diffuse potential conflicts whenever they might appear. In debate, the Asako philosopher might choose to employ the technique winds of rhetoric, which teaches to understand the person that they're debating and how they think, and thus be able to perceive a solution to the problems of their interlocutor. But where using information to settle disputes is a happy byproduct for the Asako philosopher, it is the raison d'etre of the next path, the Asako mediator. In a family of monks, the mediators are perhaps the most monkish of them all. To become a mediator means to be dedicated to the cause of peace above all else. Any who wish to become one are required to swear oaths to never initiate any kind of conflict with their fellow Rokugani. Whenever the temperature gets a little heated in the imperial court between two opposite parties, rest assured that there will often be an Asako mediator on hand to try and intervene and make sure that things don't escalate too far. For they believe that whenever possible, they should try to bring opposing parties into harmonious accord. Mediators train especially in means and ways of diffusing situations that are about to break into open violence. The technique stand down trains the Asako mediator to calmly intervene when it looks like violence is about to break out and persuade the hostile party not to go through with their ill-considered actions. With that, we move on to the final two paths that come courtesy not of the Asako, but of the Shiba family. The first of which, the Shiba Advisor, is pretty self-explanatory. Since they are the military arm of the Phoenix clan, it makes sense that some Shiba would study with the Asako, though their fields of focus are mostly on military tactics and the history of warfare. As such, Shiba advisors are very knowledgeable when it comes to strategy and tactics, and rare is the Phoenix general that goes into the field without a Shiba advisor to assist him or her. The technique Lessons Never Forgotten enable the Shiba advisor to call upon their scholarly knowledge in order to improve the army's chances of victory, emphasizing the application of the historical precedents of previous wars to the conflicts of today. Finally, the Shiba Arbitrator, a path that speaks very much to the historical role the Shiba have played within the Phoenix clan itself. Apart from their heavy focus on magic and shugenjas, the thing that has made the Phoenix unique compared to the other great clans is that they have historically suffered more from internal division than any other. It never reached the point of violent conflict, but still, you simply just don't see that kind of disunity in the history of the other great clans. And that's because, compared to the others, the founding of the Phoenix clan is very unique. Every other great clan was organized essentially the same way. The lineage descended from the founding kami always led, while the lineages descended from the original vassals always followed. This is especially clear when you look at the list of clan champions of each great clan before the clan wars happened. The Bayushi always led the Scorpion clan. The Crane were always led by the Doji, the Crab by the Hida. The Lion are a bit unusual in that sometimes a Matsu took charge instead of an Akodo, but this always seemed temporary, and whenever the Matsu incumbent stepped down or was killed, the office of clan champion inevitably returned to the Akodo family. The Matsu, it seemed, never harbored any real ambition of usurping leadership of the Lion clan for themselves. But the Phoenix are unique, in that while the office of clan champion has always been held by the Shiba family, it's not the clan champion who rules the Phoenix clan. That distinction belongs to the Isawa family through the Council of Elemental Masters, and that's because their namesake founder, the Master Shugenja Isawa, resented the idea of being ruled over by the kami after their fall from heaven. Both Isawa and the kami Shiba had perished in the war with Fu Lang. As a result, there was a dispute over who should lead the Phoenix clan. In the end, the Isawa won, mostly because Shiba's son and successor, Tsuzaki, on the advice of his father's spirit, prioritized clan unity over asserting his right to rule. As you can imagine, this was bound to leave a sense of bad feeling between the two families. Naturally, the Isawa pride themselves on the fact that theirs is the only clan that isn't ruled by either a kami or the descendants of one, interpreting Shiba's famous gesture of kneeling to Isawa as a sign of submission. Of course, in reality, Shiba had knelt in an effort to persuade Isawa to take part in the war against Fu Lang, pledging to personally ensure the safety of Isawa's kinsmen. And while the Shiba have mostly embraced this role as protectors of the Phoenix clan and the Isawa in particular, there have always been those that have resented the arrogant presumption of the Isawa. The way they see it, Isawa himself would have happily left the rest of the empire to burn as long as he thought he could keep his little corner of it safe from Fu Lang, and that it was only by humbling himself in the way that he had that Shiba had finally persuaded him to do what was right and fight for the empire. This alone would have justified the need for the Shiba family to practice internal diplomacy within the Phoenix clan. But what really brought the arbitrator path into being was the mutual antipathy between the Isawa and the other major family of the Phoenix clan, the Asako. And if you thought the issues between the Shiba and Isawa were bad, oh, you ain't seen nothing yet. The hostility between the Asako and Isawa was only slightly younger than the clan itself. First beginning with a dispute between the two families over who was the rightful owner of the powerful artifact known as Isawa's Last Wish, while another major factor in the dispute was the Path of Man, which the Asako family, you may recall, had sworn to keep secret on the orders of the spirit of Shiba. Of course, it didn't take long for the Isawa to learn that the Asako were hiding something, and their refusal to divulge what they were hiding only served to make relations between the two families even worse. And so the Shiba, the only family that didn't have a dog in either of these fights, had to step in and mediate the dispute, and ever since have borne the thankless task of keeping peace between the Asako and Isawa. It's certainly interesting that the Asako, being the dedicated courtiers of the Phoenix clan, are all about promoting peace and harmony between the other great clans, but rely on the Shiba to keep peace within the Phoenix. I don't know, aren't there plenty of old sayings about things like stones and glass houses and putting one's own house in order first? As you can imagine though, with centuries of having to deal with barely constrained infighting, the Shiba arbitrator path has acquired a lot of experience in dealing with seemingly irreconcilable disputes. No doubt many students of this path are especially grateful for the technique Harmony of the Elements, which teaches the arbitrator how to resolve disputes, mostly by proposing options in which both sides stand to gain from it. But even then, at best, these mediations by the Shiba arbitrators were little more than a band-aid. A band-aid that was easily ripped off in the early phase of the clan war by the machinations of one Kuni Yori, ensuring that the Phoenix clan was too divided against itself to be much of a factor, at least for a while. Still, despite the impressions you may have gotten from this video, the Phoenix clan courtiers are not useless. While many in the clan would prefer to just ignore the outside world and dedicate themselves wholly to the pursuit of knowledge, most do recognize that there has to be some connection to the outside world, and the courtiers play a vital role in this. After all, what good is knowledge if it is not used for a noble purpose? For all that the Phoenix clan have always gotten along best with the dragon, the main point of difference between the two clans is the fact that the Phoenix actually see value in the outer world beyond the pursuit of enlightenment. It is not enough to help the self, knowledge should also be used to help others. And while Phoenix clan courtiers can be either a little too idealistic or a little too overbearing for their own good, they are mostly sincere in the conviction that harmony within the empire can be achieved. It's a hard task, and sometimes seemingly a thankless and futile one, but the Phoenix clan are nothing if not persistent, whether in the pursuit of knowledge or in the pursuit of peace. And maybe, just maybe, with enough persistence and enough knowledge, they might someday find a way to heal the divisions within their own clan, and perhaps even the divisions within the Emerald Empire. If nothing else, that is a goal worth striving for. He used to be called Citizen 625726. He used to call himself Unbroken. When he left his dystopian city behind, he thought he had found paradise. What he found was uglier and darker than anything he could have imagined. This is his story. This is Inferior. Now available in ebook, paperback, and audio form. Links in the description.